So I appreciate that. One of the things that came to my mind when you were mentioning the role of race in the police and what that feels like in Olympia, what came to my mind was in 2015, I believe, there was two young men that had allegedly, like, they were walking down the street and a cop was responding to a report of some guys stealing some beer from a local grocery store. They fled on foot and retreated into the woods, and the officer said that he was attacked by a skateboard but uninjured, and it resulted in one of them being shot and I believe possibly paralyzed from the waist down. That was the as of 2015 the report that I saw. And so I think and you mentioned about trying to look at each other as equivalents and treating people with dignity and respect and so forth. And so I think one of the roles that or one of the key components of that is adequate training. Is that if somebody's accused of stealing beer and they're running away and or coming back at you with a skateboard, I don't think the appropriate, whether legal or not, outcome should be somebody getting shot. That should be, it should be, to me, viewed as a failing of both the community in order for the crime to arise in the first place, and of the community and the police again for losing a citizen for what seems to be a relatively petty crime that escalated rapidly as a result of how it was pursued. So I wonder what role would the commissioner possibly have at helping to encourage that type of training, and what kind of approach, you mentioned your communication experience, what kind of approach so that the police don't feel attacked, but that we just feel like they're not being appropriately trained to handle and behave in the manner that we're expecting them as a community.
Yeah. Yeah. So right after that incident, and I won't get too much into the details of that case because I'm on the city council and it's sort of, related to how we operate within our police department, but I'll speak about it a little more generally. But we did enhance our police training by $500,000 right away. And we're in the process of building a community policing package, which gives us the ability to keep that training fund going over the long term. And then, I think we really have to look at how police operate, because the fundamental thing for me is that regardless of what happened with those two young men and that officer that evening, the officer should have never been by himself in the dark to have that interaction in the first place. So how are we doing backup, and how are we responding, and when do you get out of your car? I've listened to the tapes of the 911 calls, and there were probably 4 or even 5 or 6 units within 2 or 3 minutes of him when he got out of his car. So how could that interaction have been changed if he had just waited a couple of minutes? And I think everyone knows that for the most part, when you get more than one person in a situation, you check each other's behavior and check each other's biases a little bit more. And frankly, though, a lot of it, you still gotta make sure that you're doing that inherent. Do I have a bias? Because while you might not think race is involved, you know what neighborhood you're in, right? Or who lives in the part of town that you're in, and that it's more people of color than it is in the neighborhood you live in. And so automatically there's things that you think about, or ways that you might change your behavior that aren't conscious, and they're not decisions that you're making, you're just doing it. And then all that aside, I'll say we still need to make sure that people meet or have consequences if they break the law, or they don't treat officers with respect. Because I think in that situation, and not all, in fact, I know there's a lot of really strong cases where law enforcement have really messed up. But we have to realize that everyone has to have a certain level of demeanor and professionalism and accountability and respect on both sides for this to work. And that involves
so long as the consequence for disrespect isn't penalty, death sentence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't get the death penalty for disrespect, but it
can go a long way to make the interaction better for everyone, and it's a touchy subject, I think, in that we're proud free Americans, and that we want our Fourth Amendment rights, our First Amendment rights, and our Second Amendment rights for that matter. And so we don't want to be slowly reaching for a wallet that was requested, and an officer taking the person's attire too far into consideration and responding And I'll leave that one at that. But
Yeah.
the other one I
Well, let
wanted
me
to
add
touch on.
one more
Go ahead,
sentence on that
please.
one, because I think the key to this for me is police and children interacting at a very young age. So when we have school resource officers, we have them mostly in the high schools. If we had school resource officers that were focused on hanging out with elementary school kids and building the relationship, so hey, Officer Bob, or hey, Officer Fred, them, especially in a community the size of Olympia. You're going to know them. You're going to grow up around them. You're going to know their kids and their family. And at that point, the biases tend to be less present because we've grown up with each other and we know each other. And that's the fundamental piece, is we don't know each other. And sometimes we tend to think that you're going to be hurtful because of how you're dressed, how you're acting, or how you look. And it's not okay.
Yeah, and I think that feeling of being threatened, whether it's the officer or it's the individual citizen, that is a key component in a lot of when these things go wrong. And so by engaging each other in the community outside of those types of interactions, it helps build a relationship where somebody doesn't see an officer and immediately think of a threat rather than the idea of a protector or
Yeah.
somebody that they can rely on for security. And so one of the other things I wanted to mention, and you kind of touched on it a bit again at the end, is whether it's education or whatever it is. One of the things that stuck out to me when you're talking about the calculation of poverty is childcare has significantly gone up as a portion of people's expenses as a result of more families having two parents that are working, and so that the child is home alone for a more significant amount of time. And one of the issues that you're kind of somewhat at the mercy of whatever comes down from the federal level. But what are some of the things that you think can be done to address that specifically at the county level? And one of the questions I know you mentioned before is about finding money. You mentioned we're able to find 500,000 for police training in that area. And Jill mentioned at the top of the show, I'm not sure if you had joined us yet, that a lot of it has to do with prioritization. So that the money is limited, and raising taxes is one way to get more revenue. But what are we doing to what kind of priority shifting are we going? Would we be seeing, or would want to guide in from your position as commissioner? I guess you can take that second part first.
Yeah, well, I mean, and to me, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The more we can do for our kids at a young age, the better off our whole community is going to be in the long run. So in my work at United Way, we in Washington State 2 years ago, we passed the Early Start Act, that we came up with $300 million more dollars for early learning and early learning programs, because they're the most important thing. Like, if you're not ready to go to kindergarten, the likelihood that you're going to not graduate high school is extremely high, and you can almost predict it. And so the one of the best models I like so far, and it's not implemented yet, but the voters have passed in the city of Seattle just 2 years ago. They passed a property tax increase that creates a universal pre-K program that every single kid in the city can access. Right now, we don't have that. In fact, about 60% of our kids are in-home care with a family member, and it's not any certified program. So nobody knows what they're learning or what they're doing. So we need to look at getting to a point in our society where we have universal pre-K, we have universal secondary education for at least the first 2 years. And I think that'll do a lot to move our society in the right way. And when you talk about prioritization, man, that's hard. I'm the chair of the finance committee for the city of Olympia, and trying to decide whether you fund firefighters or building inspectors. They both have a public safety role, right? So what's the first priority? And you kind of got to go with your gut in each situation. The biggest priority shift that I have in mind right now is to do everything we can to reduce our reliance on the justice system. It's consuming 75% of our county budget, and it's I don't want to say anything derogatory, but the way we do law and justice in the county is not nearly as progressive as it is in the city. And so we have some opportunities to bring people together to enhance our options programs and our problem solving courts, so we can keep people out of jail. I mean, one of the things we're doing right now, we have probably 150 prisoners a night that we send to Lewis County, so the next county over. We pay for them to have a contract jail bed, and they get no restorative services at all. And they won't take our hardest criminals. So we end up sending the lowest hanging fruit for rehabilitation to another jail in a more conservative community where they don't get any help. And that's a problem. And so we have to figure out a way to get ahead of that curve. And unfortunately, I think in the short term, it will cost more money because we'll have to do both. But if we can make that investment, I'm certain that in a decade or less, we can reduce the need to spend that much money on law and justice. It's just disgusting where we've gotten in our society with how much that programming and that work consumes and hurts people. You shouldn't be, making a mistake when you're 17 years old is one thing, but losing your ability to ever succeed as an adult because of it, I have a problem with that, especially when I know from brain science that your brain isn't fully developed to make decisions or reason until you're 21 or 25 years old. And we're locking people up at 18 years old and throwing away the key.
Well, and it is an unfortunate reality that too many Americans are facing, not just in Washington or Thurston County, but across the country. And hopefully, you'll be able to do what you can from your role to help give some insight and perhaps role model some options as to how you can take something that's not necessarily as effective as it could or should be, and move it towards that way. And so with that, we've been mentioning, we lost your video there for a moment, but been running your website on the bottom there. But if you just want to mention quickly, if people want to get involved, donate, volunteer, how they can get more information about what you're doing and how to get involved with your campaign.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, my phone's ringing, and even though you hit do not disturb, it's still going off. So find me out on electjimcooper.com, and I'm also Elect Jim Cooper on Facebook and Twitter. I'd love to have help and support on the campaign. We're raising money. We have Kelsey and I have the not this coming Saturday, but the following 3 Saturdays after that. We're looking for a whole bunch of people to go doorbelling with us, and we just love to have your support. And the other thing is, encourage everyone on your calls to reach out to a local elected official and get to know them. They're regular people like me, and they need help. I can't influence everyone else, and having an army of people like you to help make influence is the way things get done in communities. You don't do it from the top down, you do it from the bottom up. So thanks a lot for having me, and I hope I'll have your support.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. And for those of us in Thurston County, I think you pretty much got them locked up. And so I think it should be an interesting time, and it should be a good race. And so I'm hoping to see you guys both come through and with the progressive agendas that I think a lot of Americans, especially in Thurston County, are waiting for. And so just want to thank you again for your time, and look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.